The desire to import directly really started in 2016, and they weren't successful really for a variety of reasons. And so after that, we moved on. And in 2018, we reached out really just to say to Colombia, hey, does anybody want to work with us on an import export business? And we were fortunate to have Miguel and Catalina, owners of the El Carmelo farm, reach out. And so in 2018, we kind of just went on blind trust. So every trip that we've done have just developed or solidified that relationship between Miguel and Catalina and Laura and I and the farm and Grounds for Thought. And so what started too is just an optimistic opportunity in 2018 to order coffee from a farm in Colombia has turned into what we see as a long-term opportunity and relationship with people in Colombia that we really love. And so when we go back here once or twice a year, it's not only to check in on the farm, see how the harvest is going, plan personally with Miguel and Catalina on the next 12 or 24 months, but it's also just to go back to a place that we've fallen in love with. And so it's business, of course, but it's become more than that. It's really become about true friendship and a true love of the country. Okay, so the trip to Colombia this time, they're always about exploring the country, the culture, the arts, and indeed the coffee culture of Colombia. And so we try to combine in these trips a little bit of fun and some business. This trip specifically because in October of last year, of 2022, we had gotten together with Miguel and Catalina and talked about the creation of the nature reserve. And so that had happened, like I said, in October of last year. And so the March trip was our first opportunity to come to Colombia and work directly with the farm for the creation and the establishment and the announcement of the Grounds for Thought Nature Reserve. So it was an opportunity for us to not only get back to the farm, to a place we loved, show it to other people, but to take the whole thing up another notch, not only with our largest coffee order ever, but the creation of the nature reserve, so that we can ensure that we're producing good coffee and trying to do it in a sustainable fashion for the future. Having been this last trip, our fourth, have been 4 times, and we indeed have flown into Bogota every time. Now, logistically, it makes the most sense. And then, frankly, the city is so fantastic. It's huge. People say it's like New York City in the 70s. It's alive, it's gritty, it's vibrant, it's all of those things. And that's what makes it so fantastic. And so even though we have flown into Bogota, we spend a day or two every time we're there and really only, in some ways, explored a relatively small section of the city. There is just so much to explore there, whether it's culturally, whether it's the food, whether it's the biking infrastructure, the arts. The city has so many things to offer. So while I'm interested in checking out other major ports of entry for Colombia, right now Bogota makes the most sense and is such a fantastic city that I look forward to learning about it myself and share those opportunities with others.
Semana a nuestra vicepresidenta Francia Márquez, toda la burguesía y la aristocracia de este país salió a criticarle porque iba a montarse en el helicóptero, a hacer sus funciones. Pues voy a hacer esa función.
Having been to Bogota 4 times, we wanted to kind of gain a deeper knowledge of the history and the culture of the city. And so for the first time, we had arranged to have a walking tour of the Candelaria district. It's kind of the historical center of Bogota, so it's a fascinating place. And so we had arranged to meet this young woman who was going to be our tour guide. And it was supposed to be a 3.5-hour tour, and it ended up being so much more than that. And we started, we met, and it was a group of 7 of us. And as the tour went on, she realized that we as a group wanted to engage in history and in politics and in art, and had lots of questions. And so this 3.5-hour tour ended up lasting 6 hours. And we started with April 9th of 1948 and the assassination of a political figure in the community in Bogota, and how that basically led to from 1948 all the way up to current day. And so it was fantastic because it combined history and art. And so the whole day was just incredibly powerful. And I can't recommend enough. It was, I've walked around these areas several times and saying, oh, this is beautiful, how interesting. The culture, the street food, the street art, the bands, the music going, that's enough. I mean, there's so much eye candy. But then to have a guide to be able to take you through that same area and take your understanding and your appreciation of the area up another level was so fantastic.
What happened was that at first, when the Spanish arrived,
so many favorite parts of the trip. Every trip has great moments to it, but one of the overall things that I really enjoy and I enjoy showing people is that we fly to a town called Neiva, all right? And Neiva is the capital and financial and economic district of the Huila region, which is one of the growing regions of Colombia. And it's also what the region the farm is located in. And then it's about an hour truck ride really, to this little town called Teruel. And Teruel, it's really a cultural shift from what is a thoroughly modern city in Bogota to this frontier rural town in Teruel. And we also, I can't say enough nice things about it because we're often we are the only American tourist in town at any given time. They want to know about why you're here, and we come there to learn about their culture and about their history and the people, in addition to trying to source great coffee. In a 7-day, 8-day period, we're able to go from a thoroughly modern city that's about world-class art and food down to a very small village in the hills. And then from there, when we go up into the farm itself, it's depending on the weather and the vehicle you're in, up to an hour car ride up into the hills on a one-lane dirt road that's subject to washouts and boulders, and it's quite the journey. And then once you get to the farm, it's spectacular. So one of the things that we talk about is our trips to Bogota, our trips to Neiva, trips to Teruel. It sounds like a lot of fun. We've talked about everything but actually coffee. And coffee is really one of the great components of this trip. And so even though I've been in the business for 34 years now, along with Laura, we still have a lot to learn when it comes to aspects, particularly on the agricultural and growing side, especially coffee. And so for us, the trip related to the coffee education starts with a trip to the nursery. And the nursery is the place where the seed itself gets planted into the ground, and that's where the journey starts. And what's amazing is that one of the things after all the time we learned our trip to the nursery is you've got a seed bed that's 5 or 6 feet wide and maybe 60 feet long, and it has 70,000 seeds in it. Each one of them is hand planted, all right? And not only that, we learned that if you take a coffee bean, you've got the rounded side and you have the side with the crack in it, okay? Well, we learned that if you plant the bean with the crack side down, it's gonna grow better than if you plant it with the round side down. So you think about a person sitting there over and over and over again planting 70,000 seeds. All aspects of the coffee production are very impressive because it's all by hand, all right? There's virtually no mechanization involved, and that includes from planting the seed to picking it on the harvested end. And we had an opportunity to try and say, how do you plant a seed? And how do you fill the dirt bag properly? You say, okay, you've got a little bag and you put some dirt in it and it's all good. And you realize, no, it has to be the right granular size, it has to be the right moisture content, it has to be packed properly. And you've got a guy sitting here with 60, 70,000 bags, and he is just banging them out every 5 or 10 seconds because he's got the touch, all right? And then we sit down and you look like you've never handled a spoon before, you know? And so you realize a deep appreciation for one, not only how much work goes into every step along the way of the coffee process, but how much skill goes into what on the surface may look like a very simple job. some grounds for thought coffee right from the very start. 3 years from now, this will be a lovely El Carmelo Farm Cultura plant growing some fantastic coffee. Looking forward to coming back and watching the plant's progress. It's super fun getting to the farm itself. And that's when then we get into the trucks, in the back end of the trucks, and we start working our way up the hills, and probably 5-10 miles an hour because of the conditions of the roads. And that's assuming you don't run into any herds of cattle or chickens. Or to give you an idea, when you're in a truck, you're going up this steep hill in first or second gear. You're bouncing like this kind of deal. I remember the first time I visited the farm going up the hill, I asked Miguel, I said, Miguel, what would happen if your truck were to break? And he said, it must not. Wasn't even going to think about it. All right. And so it's beautiful. It's adventurous. And then I love, you turn this corner and then all of a sudden there's the El Carmelo Valley, the El Carmelo Springs, the El Carmelo Farm. All you can hear is the water and the wind, and depending on the time of the year, the smell from the flowering of the plants and stuff. And so it's just a really special place. Miguel, grew up there. It's the family farm. All these kind of things to make it just a really special place that can sustain life for the farmers, for people down the valley. It's just great. One of the things about the El Carmelo farm is that even though it's been there for, almost 100 years now, still 20 or 25% of the farm is in virgin forest, native land. And so Miguel and I began talking about how do we ensure that you guys can make enough money, grow enough coffee, and then we leave this so that it can basically just be, people say, hey, what do you want to do with the nature reserve? Nothing. That's the whole point, is to allow it to continue to grow and be the important place that it is for animals and plants. And so for us, this was an opportunity to come and take the trek up the hill, which is about an hour plus straight up the side of a mountain. All right. So it's we're sucking wind by the time we get there for sure, but it's spectacularly beautiful. You'll hike through a combination of coffee plants, through different kinds of like banana trees, and come up over this ridge. And then here Miguel has put up this sign announcing the grounds for thought, Apu Cafe, El Carmelo Farm Nature Reserve. And it just like at that point, it just really kind of blew us away, because you're like, hey, this is real now. This is what this really means. And so we had an opportunity to spend a couple hours up there. It is part of a series of private land reserves in the country that create migratory pathways to larger official national reserves. And so we're just trying to, in a small way, play what we think is an important role in nature preservation and holding 25% of the farm in reserve. Yeah, wow.
Now that you don't have to
Pretty
do it again.
unbelievable.
That's true.
One of the things that we enjoy doing is that not only we get an opportunity to come and spend some time, legitimate time at the El Carmelo farm, but we specifically take a day to go and visit what are often friends of Miguel in the region. And so it's always interesting to see other farms, because there are huge farms, there are very small farms. Miguel grows primarily top grade specialty coffee, and he's a leader in trying to convince other farmers in the area that if you grow specialty coffee and you take the time and the energy and the effort, which is harder, to grow specialty coffee, the results on the back end could potentially be people like us willing to pay way more money for that pound than you could get at the local mill. And so going to other farms is a great opportunity to see how different topography affects how coffee is grown, to see sometimes the true density of coffee plants and what other coffee workers and pickers are involved in, how the process post-picking goes. So we were able to see how the depulping and the beginning of the fermentation and drying process. And then one of the things that I've grown to appreciate about Miguel is that Miguel is fortunate that having grown up to had a formal education, has worked outside the coffee industry, and so he has a lot of really good knowledge. And he's a great agronomist, all right? And so he loves to share that knowledge with other people.
This in fertilization.
Just the dress.
And so every time we visit these farms, large or small, the conversation always ends up turning to him and the owner talking about Miguel showing, say, hey, you should trim this branch here. And, if you cut and let the light come in this way. And if you think about cutting. And so it always ends up being a really interesting conversation to just sit back and listen to these people talk about the future of specialty coffee. And so I love visiting all coffee farms, because they're all unique and special in their own way. Miguel Llanos and Catalina Castillo are the owners of the El Carmelo farm. They are also the owners, or their company is Apu Cafe. And Apu is a indigenous Colombiano word and it basically means strength. And so it just represents everything they're trying to do as a company, which is help their community and do the best job they can. And so that's what Apu stands for, and it's their mission basically as a company. And what they do is, besides owning their farm, is they have Apu, which is a cafe, and their coffee brand, because they also roast, sell, and distribute their Apu Cafe brand in Colombia. They're a small company in their community trying to do the right thing, grow their brand, grow their business, help other farmers, help out in the community, and just generally be a positive influence in their area. And we love going to experience what they love to show us about Colombia, whether it's the music or the culture or the art. They treat us to homemade cultural foods and vegetables and dishes. We have had the opportunity to see local bands, local youth bands. Our final day in Teruel was at the cafe, which is a beautiful place that overlooks the valley. And we really thought, hey, we're gonna meet, and the friends we've made over the week say goodbye as we head off back to Teruel or back to Neiva to fly. It ends up being a 3-hour festival, basically. They had brought a little band in. We ended up dancing and laughing, and it ended up being just the perfect closer for what ended up being a fantastic trip. Grounds has always tried to push it. 34 years into business here, we want to keep it interesting. We want to provide new and unique products, and we want to always engage. And so they're the same way. They were looking to take their company up a notch and to begin exporting to other countries. And so, it would be easier to not do what we're doing, but it would be so much less interesting, so less unique. And you think about it, our customers here in Grounds for Thought are drinking coffee from this one farm that is exported solely to us here in North America. And so it's a truly fantastic cup of coffee. It tastes great, and people who are supporting Grounds by buying Colombian coffee are doing great things themselves, because they're helping a small family and small business thrive in Colombia, and they're helping make that community a better place also. Simpatico, for both of us.
I think trips like this really make us truly appreciate the hard work that goes into when you sit down and you have a cup at the shop in the morning. You say, oh man, this is so delicious. It gives you an idea of how much insanely hard work went in to get that cup to the table. So it's amazing that we have coffee at all, I think.
BG Independent News is made possible with support from people like you. Help keep news in Bowling Green free and accessible to everyone by becoming a contributor today. Visit bgindependentmedia.org/support to help Bowling Green's best source for local news, arts coverage, reviews, opinions, campus information, and community updates.